It's like 150 or something, right?
It's got to be around that. 125, 140, 145 behind.
Alex and Doug.
In this hand for PokerNews.com, we are playing three-handed at the final table of a $25,000 buy-in tournament at the Lodge, watching two world-class players, Alex Foxen and Doug Polk, battle it out. Alex Foxen has a big stack with about 60 big blinds. He limps in the small blind with the 7-5 offsuit, which is perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. He could raise if he thinks Polk's going to be a little bit too weak, and to be fair, he probably wants to mix it up in general. Whatever. He limps the 7-5 offsuit. Doug Polk, with the Queen 2 offsuit, with a 20 big blind stack, has a very reasonable check, and just try to make something. Let's head to the flop.
Heads up to a flop. Open ender for Alex.
The flop comes Jack 6-4. Alex Foxen has an open-ended straight draw. And you may be surprised to see him check. But this is actually very good poker and stack depth awareness from Foxen. Because if Foxen bets and Doug Polk has anything reasonable, he may just shove it all in. And then Foxen would have to either make a close call-off with 38-ish% equity, depending on Polk's range, or fold a hand that has a lot of equity. You really do not want to fold a hand that has a lot of equity in general in poker. And as stacks start to get very shallow, you're going to find that these 8-out draws and 9-out draws have to be very careful betting in spots where your opponent could shove. So here the pot's 24,000 and Doug Polk has 143,000 in the stack. If Foxen bets, let's say 12,000, half pot, Polk can easily just shove it all in. And that would be really bad for Foxen. So for that reason, checking becomes very reasonable for Foxen. If he checks, and then Doug Polk bets very frequently, you know, Doug Polk is known to be a generally aggressive player, then Foxen can shove and force Polk to fold when he doesn't have anything. So I imagine that's probably what's going to happen in this scenario some portion of the time, or at least that's what Foxen was thinking about when he did make the check. And I want to make sure that you are aware of this idea, especially against more aggressive opponents, because you really do not want to bet the flop here and get shoved off your hand. Actually discuss this concept in depth in my newest book, 100 Essential Tips to Master No Limit Hold'em. This concept comes up a lot whenever you are playing 20, 30, 40 big blinds deep or in 3-bet pots. So make sure you do not get blown off your equity. You can get this book on Amazon, all the major bookstores, D&B Poker. We'll put links down below. All right, Doug Polk had queen high. He says no thank you. As expected. Let's head to the turn.
That's
8,000 is the bet. Doug's queen high in the lead here. Makes the call.
The turn is the 6 of spades. It's an interesting card. You have to presume Foxen's going to bet some 6s on the flop, and a lot of jacks, and some 4s. That said, it's pretty easy for Foxen to have a whole lot of just nonsense, just checking, looking to perhaps bluff the turn and maybe the river. So Foxen does go for a small bet. You may say, didn't I just say you shouldn't be betting these draws that have good equity? Yes. However, there's a big difference between betting a draw on the flop that would have to fold to a raise and betting a draw on the turn that would have to fold to the raise. Because now on the turn, Foxen's equity kind of gets chopped in half because there's only one more card to come on the river, right? On the flop, if you bet and have to fold to a shove, now you miss out on seeing 2 cards. Now Foxen knows the turn was no good, so if he bets now and gets shoved, it's not nearly that big of a deal. So now Foxen does go for the turn bet. You have to realize when you're checking the 7 high on the flop, the goal is usually not to just check it down and see if 7 high wins. That's not how you win at poker. Okay, so Foxen does go for the bet of 8,000, and you may be surprised to see Polk call with just the queen high. And look, this is the tough thing about playing against good, strong, world-class players. They realize pot odds exist. At this point, Doug Polk has to put in 8 to try to win 40. He needs to realize 20-ish% equity with this queen high. Now, you see here he's going to win 68% of the time, but that's not really what you want to be looking at. You want to consider how often is queen high going to win against Alex Foxen's entire range, and on top of that, how often is he going to get blown off of it on the river with another bet? Because queen high is usually not such a good calling hand on the river. And I don't know how much equity Polk has exactly in this spot or how much equity he's going to realize, but it's probably something like 25-ish%, something like that if I had to guess. And, 25 is more than 20. Now, we are at a final table, and there are payout implications. So if anything, that should make Polk be a little bit tighter in this spot than normal. And I think in general, because of payout implications, you should probably let the queen high go here. That said, Alex Foxen likes to get after it. He likes to bluff. So if there's ever a player to not fold against, it's Alex Foxen. So a cool spot where there's a lot of things pushing and pulling Polk both directions. And, well, it seems like so far he's making the right decision. Let's head to the river.
Let's see if Foxen tries to fire again.
The river is the 9 of hearts, a complete brick for Alex Foxen. What I want to know is now, what would you do with the 7 high in this spot? Would you check, looking to check fold, check looking to check raise? Would you bet small, like 20,000? Would you bet pot, 40,000? Or would you overpot it for 60,000? Take a second, think about it, and write what you would do in the comment section below, and then we're going to see what Foxen does.
He is going to fire.
How much is that?
About 60,000.
60,000. Be about half of Doug's remaining stack here. Doug's got a queen high.
This is a neat spot where I think any betting option is very viable because at this point, Foxen's not going to win at the showdown. And the 7 high is not a particularly good hand to check raise because whenever you check and it checks behind, you just lose, right? You'd much rather check raise perhaps with a hand like a 4 or maybe random king high or something like that. Because those hands will win if it goes check a large chunk of the time. But if you check and you face a bet, they don't win quite as often. But you can get some hands like a 9 to fold to a check shove. So 7 high is not a good hand to check. So we're going to bet it. So the question is, how much do we want to bet? And I think you can go anyway. This is a neat scenario because if you consider Polk's range, he's probably going to raise a lot of good, strong high cards pre-flop. So he probably doesn't have a whole lot of ace X or pocket pairs, right? So that's good. He probably doesn't have a whole lot of jacks or 6s because a lot of those will probably put some money in on the flop or maybe put in a turn raise. So, okay, worth noting. What about a 9? He's probably going to call any reasonable bet with a 9, so we don't really care about that. So I think all of this would lead me to bet on the medium side, like half pot, because we're trying to get stuff like king high and queen high and busted draws to fold. And that's what I would have done. That's not what Foxen does, though. Foxen bets big. He probably knows that you don't want to give someone like Doug Polk, who knows pot odds, good pot odds, because they're going to find a call. That said, you may not want to bet any amount against someone like Doug Polk because they get sticky sometimes. Foxen does go for the big bet. 1.5x pot. Let's see if Polk can call with a pretty weak bluff catcher.
But that's good enough. Doug contemplating the queen high call. makes the call. Queen high.
What's that? Queen high?
Queen deuce.
And Doug is going to scrape 160,000
What?
pot.
Ace. ICM.
After a bit of deliberation, Doug Polk resigns himself to making the only play that makes sense. And he calls. And he is relieved to see that he wins a very, very nice pot. Now you may ask, how in the world could Doug Polk call here with queen high, no kicker? And the thing is, you have to realize when Foxen goes very big, because we know Foxen is a good, strong, world-class player, he's betting very big with either really, really good hands or hands that cannot win at the showdown. So which hands are really good? Well, that's going to be sixes and jacks. The thing is, a lot of sixes and jacks may just bet the flop, right? So we can start to discount those a little bit. What hands cannot win at the showdown? Well, that's going to be hands like 5-3, 7-3, 7-5, 8-7, stuff like that. Also, there was a spade draw on the turn that missed, right? So those are hands that also may decide to bluff the river using a big bet size. So the question becomes now, is this queen of hearts, two of clubs that Doug Polk has a good hand to call with? And in this scenario, you really, really, really do not want to have cards that Foxen will feel inclined to bluff with. That's going to be spades, and also the low cards that had draws like 7-3 and 7-5 and whatnot. So I think right here, you really don't want to have a 7 or a 5. I think those are going to be cards that get bluffed very, very frequently, and Polk doesn't have any of that, right? Also, the two of clubs is just kind of like a complete brick, which is good for Doug Polk, and the queen of hearts, you know, that's a card that should not interact with Foxen's bluffs much at all, and maybe this even blocks hands like queen six of hearts that would limp preflop, or queen jack that would limp preflop. So I think Polk's hand's actually a pretty good one to call with. And if you know your opponent is very over-inclined to bluff, as, you know, I'm not going to say Foxen is definitively, but he gets after it, and you think this is a spot where he's going to try to apply immense pressure with all the potential draws, as he may, then I actually don't hate the queen high call. The only thing you're going to run into every once in a while is he's going to show you a slightly better hand that's turned into a bluff, like queen 10 or king 2. And if that's the case, that would be an absolute disaster. But this time, it works out great for Polk, and he scoop-loops a very, very nice pot. That's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, click the like and subscribe button down below. Click the notification bell. I appreciate it. And if you want another hand featuring Doug Polk, we have one lined up right now for you. Hope you enjoy.